So we have a quiz tomorrow. It's over 2 sections, 8.5, 8.6. I will be checking the 2 worksheets on 8.5 WSP, 8.5 WSP, 8.6. And the quiz is fairly small. It's not multiple choice. It's open response. So you need to show work, right? Even though you could factor and get the answers in your head, you need to show work. Here's the exact breakdown. It's a 13-question quiz. Even though when you look at this, it says 15. Well, questions 7 and 8 is really one question. Questions 9 and 10 is really one question. In other words, we have those questions specifically are factoring by grouping. They take a while. That's why they're worth 2 points each. So I want to go through the description of the quiz. The first 2 questions are going to be factoring out the GCF from a polynomial, and that's from worksheet 8.5. So if you have 8.5, you could look at it. We have some right here where I simply ask you to factor it. So here's just a random example, number 8. What is the GCF? What could you factor out of there?
3.
There's definitely a 3. What else?
An A and a D.
There's an A and there's a D, but the maximum amount of D's that you could plot is a D squared. So your GCF is 3AD squared. In order for you to get full credit, it has to be the greatest common factor, not just a common factor. Denise, paying attention? Yeah. All right, so if I pull out that 3AD squared, what would be left in here? In other words, reverse distributed property, right? 3AD squared times what would give me a 9, a to the third D squared? That would be a 3 to give me the 9, an a squared to give me the a to the third, and I don't need any more D's, right? And then how about the other one? 3 AD squared times what will give me a negative 6 AD to the third? Okay, so that would be a negative 2. The A's already there. All we need is one more D. And that's it. So question 1 and 2 are very similar to the one we just did right here. And of course, I would definitely study that. 2 questions on pulling out the GCF. Questions 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's 4 questions on factoring quadratic trinomials where your A value is 1. And it says using the shortcut, parentheses, XX. So 4 questions are going to be using the shortcut. And it's from worksheet 8.6, the one you have right now. And if we take a look at that one, doesn't matter which one you pick, it's going to be ready to factor. The A value is 1, which means you could jump right into this, and all you have to do is think what times what is negative 28, that if you combine together is negative 3. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, the trick here, the shortcut is what times what is your C value, including the negative, right? It's negative 28. What times what is negative 28, that if you combine gives you your B value. Now, I highly recommend to make a list, all right? How could you get negative 28? Well, you would have negative 1 times 28. That's one way of getting it. Or negative 2 times 14. Or negative 3. No, negative 3 doesn't work. Negative 4 times 7. And that's about it. So your list might be long. It might be short, depending on what this C value actually is. Now, once you have your list, you got to think which of these pair of numbers, if I were to combine them, give me the B value, which happens to be negative 3. So if I combine negative 1 and 28, that'll give me 27. This is definitely not a B value of 27. If I combine negative 2 and 14, that gives me 12. This B value is definitely not 12. If I combine negative 4 and 7, that gives me what? 3. This B value is 3, but it's a negative 3. So I have the right number, I just have the wrong sign. In other words, I have the right numbers, I just have the wrong signs. So we're going to change the signs. On the negative 4, we're going to change to a positive 4. And on the positive 7, we're going to change to a negative 7. Then we're simply going to plug it in, plus 4, minus 7, and that's it. So questions 3 through 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's 4 questions exactly like this. Moving on, it says questions 7 through 10. It's only 2 questions, but they're worth 2 points each. Now, why are they worth 2 points each? Because it takes a while when you factor by grouping. So there's going to be specifically 2 questions worth 4 points. It's way too valuable to skip. You have to know how to factor by grouping, and that's also on worksheet 8.5. So let's go to worksheet 8.5. It's on the front side. It's where you had those 4 terms, or you had to split them into 2 groups. So if we take a look at this guy right here, for example, I need to split it into 2 groups. So the first group is going to be 6xy minus 8x, leave some space, plus 15y minus 20. In the first group, what could you pull out? Definitely a 2, but is there anything else besides a 2? An x. So 2x is the GCF on the first group. What's left on the inside? A 3 and a y. And how about over here? 2x times what gets you back to a negative 8x? A minus 4. Let's do the same for the second group. What could you pull out of the second group? What's in common? A 5. If I pull out a 5, what's going to be left?
3y.
We're going to have a 3y also, and 5 times what gets you negative 20? It's a minus 4. So the final step when you factor by grouping is to take a step back. Let me zoom out a little, and then exaggerate some parentheses. You don't really have to do that. And pull out that common binomial. That common binomial is 3y minus 4. What's left over on the inside? 2x and a plus 5, positive 5. That was positive. So, of course, write it with the correct size parentheses. 3y minus 4, 2x plus 5. And that's it. Now, that does take a while, and that's why each one of these is worth 2 points. There's only going to be 2 of them, so that's a total of 4 points. It is very significant. Don't skip it. So that takes us all the way through 10, and it goes to 15. The last five questions come from solving quadratic equations by factoring, splitting, and solving. Okay? So let's take a look at the worksheet you have right now. All the bottom half is solving quadratic equations by factoring, splitting, and solving. There will be some that it's already factored for you, kind of like from worksheet 8.5. You see, these guys are already solved for you. I mean, it's not, wait a minute, I'm sorry. These aren't factored for you, but what could I do to do that one? Let's just do one of these. Plus, what was that? I would get rid of the 27x by subtracting 27x and subtracting 27x. So I would rewrite it. I'd have 9x squared minus 27x equals 0. Then what would I do? What do I do? Do I have something times something equals 0? Or I could split it? I do not. I need to get multiplication. What could I do to get multiplication? Factor. What could you factor out of there?
3.
A 3?
3 and an x.
A 3 and an x? What's greater than a 3?
Or 9x, sorry.
9 and an x, right? 9x. And then what would be left?
X minus 3.
An x minus 3. Now that you have something times something equals 0, you could split them and set them each equal to 0. So 9x could be equal to 0. X minus 3 could be equal to 0. And when you solve both of those, you're going to get x equals 0 because if you divide by 9, 0 divided by 9 is still 0. And x equals 3 because add 3 to both sides, x will equal 3. Those are your 2 answers. You have to write both answers to get full credit. Some of them are easy like that. Some of them will actually be factored for you already, kind of like this one right here. All you do there is apply the 0 product property. So you would say a plus 6 equals 0, and then 3a minus 7 equals 0, and you solve both of them. So this one's going to be a equals negative 6, and the other one's going to be plus 7, 3a equals 7, divide by 3, a equals 7 divided by 3, 7/3. So there's going to be some that are factored for you like that, and there's going to be some, like from this worksheet, where you have to first get it equal to 0, and then you'll have a quadratic trinomial that's factorable, kind of like this one, minus 5y, cancels, minus 5y, rewrite it, y squared, minus 5y, minus 84 equals 0. And from there, I hope you guys could make a list. What times what is negative 84? That combines together to give you negative 5. And then you split it and solve. But in a nutshell, that's your entire quiz right there. It's only 13 questions. It's open response. It's all coming from the worksheets, either identical or very similar to the questions on the worksheets.